Part 58. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 571. The three of them were all angry. They made this kite after working for a day, and whether it was Man Bao's flower kite, Bai Er's insect kite, or Bai Shanbao's tiger kite, they all helped each other. It can be said that the three kites have gathered their hard work, and they have done so well. Why should this group of people be called ugly? If it weren't for the fact that there were so many of them, Man Bao really wanted to fight with them. Anyway, my husband was halfway up the mountain, and they were at the bottom of the mountain. The opponent was also a little angry, and was staring at them aggressively, wanting to fight back after they made a move. In the end, Bai Shanbao's rationality prevailed. He held Man Bao and Bai Erlang at the same time and said, "Let's go find the kite first." "Just find the kite first, hum." The young men on the opposite side also ignited their fighting spirit, rolled up their sleeves and actively looked for their kite, trying to find it before them. Man Bao, who originally wanted to find it by himself, couldn't help pulling out Keek's cheating device and asked, "Keek, where did our kite fall?" Keek was silent for a while and then said, "I can only scan a radius of 150 meters now." "Wow, you've become stronger again." "Nonsense, last time Man Bao collected so many good things in the encyclopedia, and it got so many points. Can you not optimize yourself?" "Where is that kite?" "Not within 150 meters. Man Bao looked at Bai Shanbao and asked in a low voice, "Let's go quickly, is that where the kite fell just now?" Bai Shanbao looked in the direction she was pointing, pinched her finger with two fingers and moved it, and then asked her to point to the distant tree and said, "It's that direction." Man Bao raised his leg and walked in that direction. Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang followed quickly. The group of teenagers saw it, and quickly followed behind them. Seeing that they were so close, Man Bao simply ran away. Bai Shanbao. He was silent for a while, and could only drag Bai Erlang to chase. Bai Erlang was so angry that he shouted, "We are looking for a kite, we are looking for a kite, not a race, what are we running for?" Of course Bai Shanbao knew, and he knew that Man Bao must also know that there was a reason why she dared to run away. Seeing them running away, the teenagers who were following behind subconsciously chased them for 2 steps, and then stopped when they realized something was wrong. The leading boy scolded them as idiots, and then said, "Let's leave them alone, we will look for them carefully, the kite seems to be falling in this direction, everyone pay attention to the trees and the grass." The other 6 people responded, and dispersed to look forward. Man Bao ran a long way away, then stopped and waited for Bai Shanbao and the others to run up before continuing to move forward. Bai Erlang complained, "How did you find the kite like this? It's still close here, the kite is definitely not here, let's look further." Bai Shanbao asked, "What if the wind blows in mid-air and blows them back here? Didn't you point to that tree and say they fell there?" Bai Shanbao was a little tired, but he didn't want to go back, so he walked to the front first. "Okay, let's go." The 3 of them turned around and searched there. They didn't find their kite along the way, but they picked up 3 kites that fell down. 2 of them looked very new. It fell down today, and one of them is quite old, it should be several days old. The 3 of them picked up everything they wanted, thinking they could ask who dropped it on the way back so they could return it. The 3 of them dragged the kite forward, and then Keek, who had been silent all the time, suddenly said, "I saw them, please go straight ahead to the left, the host." Man Bao was walking straight ahead, but when she heard this, she turned to the left. Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang followed her to the left while rummaging through the bushes. Man Bao walked for a while, but still didn't see anything, so he couldn't help asking, "Where is it?" Keek was going to tell her directly, but suddenly thought of something. After a moment of silence, he said, "Guess." Man Bao scratched his head, looked left and right, and said, "It's not on the ground, our kite is so big, did it fall off a tree?" Man Bao raised his head to look at the tree above him, looked around while walking forward, and almost hit the tree. Bai Shanbao subconsciously raised his head to look up. He was about to turn his gaze away when he suddenly saw something and pointed to a dense tree crown and asked, "Look, is it a kite?" Man Bao and Bai Er immediately leaned over to have a look, and after looking at it for a while, they said, it's a little red, it looks really nice." Bai Er was confused, "Is my worm painted red? Isn't it mostly yellow? You don't have one, maybe it's a beauty kite." Bai Er thought about it carefully. The beauty kite was much smaller than his big bug kite, and it flew far away at that time, so he didn't quite remember what color it was. But what Man Bao said is still very possible. So the three of them stood under the tree, looked up at the tall giant tree together, and asked, "Then how do you take it down?" Bai Erlang, climbing a tree. After he finished speaking, he and Man Bao Bai Shanbao looked at Daji, who had been silently following, with a guilty conscience. Dagil watches them silently. The three of them turned their heads back together and murmured softly, "I've never climbed such a tall tree." "I didn't either, I was a little scared," Man Bao said. "I should have let my fourth brother come, too. My fourth brother is amazing, he has climbed trees no matter how tall they are in the village." Both Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang still had certain memories of Zhou Lang climbing the tree, and they nodded. Bai Erlang said, "Why don't you go back and call brother Zhou?" Bai Shanbao, "No, we will definitely meet those people when we go out from here. They will know that we have found us when we go back and call for someone." Bai Erlang asked, "Then what should we do?" Man Bao turned to look at Daji, Bai Shanbao also turned to look at Daji, and Bai Erlang followed suit. "Daji." The three surrounded Daji together, and asked repeatedly, "Daji, can you climb trees? Daji, can you fly to the tree with a whiff? Daji, why don't you help us fetch the kite? The little master has spoken, can Daji still refuse?" He sighed, stood under the tree, rolled up his sleeves and said, "Stand back a bit." The three backed away immediately. Keek in Manbao's mind didn't say anything, and when Daji was about to climb up the tree, it said, "This is not Manbao." Keek said again, "But it's also near here, but the group of people behind the host have also found it." As soon as the words fell, the group of teenagers found them. One of them yelled, and they huffed and surrounded them. They also looked up at the top of the tree and asked, "Did you find it? Isn't that too high? Hey, will your people bring down my kite too?" Yes, they will, but they will accidentally step on the beauty's kite, turning the beauty into an ugly person. Just thinking about it, Daji, who had already climbed up the tree to the side of the kite, suddenly said, "Master, this is not our kite." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 572. The Three of Bai Shanbao. When the teenagers heard this, they burst out laughing, and the leader immediately waved his hand and said in greeting, hurry up, spread out and look for it, we must find our kite ahead of them." Man Bao puffed up and asked Keek, "Where is it?" "Forget it, don't tell me, we will find it ourselves, I don't believe it, we still can't find them." So the three of them also left Daji on the tree, and each ran to look for it nearby. Daji on the tree. He sighed sadly, and resigned to his fate, he untied the kite and took it down. The kite strings were in a mess, entangled with the branches and leaves, and it was naturally impossible for him to untie all the strings. He simply pulled out a short knife, cut off all the threads, and then carefully slid down with only the kite. As a result, before he landed, he heard a boy shout, I found it, on this tree." "Where is it, where is it? Wow, it's so tall, how do I get this? Where's the servant of the three of them? He can climb trees." "Daji." Daji slowed down, and slid slowly to the ground, then looked at the kite that had just been taken out of his hand, and frowned. Man Bao and the others also ran over to look. When they looked up, they saw the kite hanging on the book. Now they were sure that it was their kite. Because Bai Erlang's worm head was facing downwards, they could see it clearly. They actually found it ahead of time. The three of them glared at the group of teenagers, but when they remembered something, the three of them became happy again, and said, "Can you climb trees?" "We can't, but will you?" Originally, I wanted to ask Bai Shanbao's servants to go up and do it, but seeing them like this, the teenagers also became stubborn and shouted, "We can't climb trees, but we can fight." "Yes, just hit it with a stick." The tree where the two kites fell was not as tall as the previous tree, so it was possible to find a longer bamboo pole. Man Bao said disgustedly, "Even if the best kite is beaten by you, it will be broken. Are you looking for the kite or killing the kite? Speaking of which, you still want your servants to climb up to grab the top spot." Man Bao snorted and said, "We can climb up and take it down even if we don't let Daji go up." Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang said in unison, "Not bad. We don't believe it." Man Bao, "Then let's make a bet. If we can climb up and take it down, you will lose. If we can't take it down, no matter whether you can take it down, then we will lose." "What bet?" Man Bao, "If we can take it down, you have to take your own kite and say ugly kite 3 times, and then say beautiful kite 3 times to my junior brother's big bug kite. How about it? Do you dare to bet?" The teenagers discussed it, and they took a closer look at Bai Shanbao's appearance and age, and found that they were about the same size as them, and maybe even a year or two younger than them, so they were not afraid at all, and said, "Just bet, bet. Who is afraid of whom? But we declare in advance that we cannot ask your family's servants to help." The three of Man Bao said in unison, "No problem." Then the three of them discussed together, "Who will go?" Bai Shanbao said, "Fine, guessing is over. Man Bao, the one who wins, or the one who loses?" Bai Erlang, "Of course you can win. It's a rare time to climb a tree openly." So the three put their hands behind their backs, said rock paper scissors, and then punched at the same time. The three quickly completed 3 rounds without stopping in between. In the end, Man Bao, who has always been lucky, won. She giggled, ran to Daji and asked for a short knife, pinned it to her waist, then picked up her skirt and fixed it on her waist, hugged the tree and climbed up. The 7 teenagers stared with their mouths wide open, speechless for a while. Man Bao quickly climbed to the top, and then climbed to a branch to finish. He cut off all the messy threads with a knife, then carried the 2 kites behind his back, and walked down the tree hugging the tree. The 7 teenagers slowly closed their mouths. Because of the bet with them, Man Bao didn't pretend to accidentally step on their beauty kite, but directly jumped to the ground with 2 kites on his back, returned the beauty kite to them, and then lifted the beauty kite to the 7 people. Lifting his chin, "Speak." 7 teenagers. Bai Erlang took his big insect kite, stood directly in front of the teenagers, and pointed his insect head at them. The 7 teenagers couldn't bear to look directly at them and turned their heads away. It was not difficult at all for them to call their beauty kite an ugly kite, but it would really break their conscience to ask them to call a beautiful kite to such an ugly big bug kite. Up. But under the coercion of the 3, the 7 still had to abandon their sense of shame, and whispered to the big bug kite against their conscience, "Beautiful kite, beautiful kite, beautiful kite." Man Bao rubbed his ears and said, "I didn't hear clearly." Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang nodded together, "That's right, I didn't hear clearly." The leading boy blushed and shouted angrily, beautiful kite, is this okay?" "It's more or less the same." Bai Shanbao took Bai Erlang's big bug kite, looked at it carefully and said, "It looks like a big bug, why do you say it's ugly? Where does it look like? Shouldn't the big bug be a tiger?" Bai Shanbao, "Mine is a tiger, and this big bug is a caterpillar. Caterpillar kites are not like that either, the boy said, pointing to a kite in the sky and saying, see, that's the caterpillar kite. The three looked up together, and Manbao first expressed contempt. Put it down, how could the caterpillar's mouth be red? It's only a little bit red, and it looks so red. That's right, the caterpillar's mouth is obviously black, Bai Erlang said with certainty. I've caught so many caterpillars, I can't understand it better. And the body of the caterpillar is so bright. I already thought it was too much for Bai to dye the green body of the caterpillar yellow, but this caterpillar kite is even more so. The teenagers were stunned. Who said that the caterpillar kite should be made after a real caterpillar? And you don't look real, don't you paint it in all kinds of colors? I'm a caterpillar that just rolled out of a flower bush, so I'm stained with a different color. The leading teenager was amused by this sentence, and asked, why on earth are we talking such useless nonsense to you here? The three of Manbao looked at him like an idiot. Who knows you? Good night, see you tomorrow. Please take a leave, the update at noon today is postponed to 2 p.m, and now people are still outside. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 573. Daji waited until they had quarreled, and then went forward with the kite in his hand. Master, Miss Man, this is the kite I just took down. Manbao looked down and couldn't help but let out a wow. He took it over and looked at it, and exclaimed, what a beautiful kite. Bai Shanbao also thought it was very beautiful, and after looking at it, he asked, is it Phoenix? It's the Phoenix. The teenagers over there also came up to look at it, and the leader said, it's still made of silk cloth. Only rich and powerful families can make such a kite. You can make it? You took it from the tree just now. The three nodded together. The young men envied their good luck, checked with them and said, the skeleton is still in good condition, and the silk cloth is not damaged. After tidying up, you can fly again. Manbao likes this pattern very much. The most important thing is that the color is bright and the design is very realistic. She half hugs her in her arms and looks at Bai Shanbao. Bai Shanbao waved his hand generously and said, here you are. Manbao cheered, we have spare wires in our luggage, let's connect them now. It is good. Bai Shanbao and the others wanted to go back to the mountain, so the teenagers were naturally there too. The two groups of people were together, and they were similar in age, so they couldn't help talking. Manbao asked them first, what's your name? My name is Chiju. My name is Shan Yu. What's your name again? Manbao and the others also introduced themselves, saying, our husband and your husband are brothers, so we and you are also brothers. Chiju snorted and said, we are older than you. Manbao said familiarly, arranged according to the time of admission, I am Mr. Dajhan who worshipped in the 6th year. When did you enter school? All the boys. Manbao knew it at a glance, and became proud, then I am older than you have to call me senior sister. The young men ignored her and quickened their pace. When Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang saw it, they were overjoyed, and immediately followed to catch up. Brothers, what is the name of your academy and where is it? We will go and play with you later. The young men were so angry that they didn't want to pay attention to these three people, and Shan Yu who was in front almost ran away. The two groups of people hurried back to the halfway up the mountain. There were more and more people flying kites in the open space on the road. Manbao was holding the beautiful kite in his hand. Although his speed was a bit slow, he still chased after the boys and let them go. They are called senior sisters. Hey, stop. There was a loud shout, and Manbao subconsciously tilted his head to look at the source of the sound, but he kept chasing after the person in front of him. What about you, you still run away? A whip was drawn in the air, Man Bao turned his body sideways in surprise, but Daji grabbed the whip. Man Bao frowned, and then looked at the person who whipped the whip. It was a rather old girl, holding a whip and looking at her coldly. Seeing this, Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang immediately ran back from the front, looked at Man Bao first, and made sure that she was not injured, then stared at the person and said angrily, "Who are you? Why did you hit someone for no reason?" The teenagers who had gone a long way also turned around and came back. The girl with the whip frowned, her face was cold. "You guys are so brave, do you know who I am?" Man Bao pushed aside Bai Shanbao who was standing in front of him, raised his chin and said, "You don't have any tattoos on your face, so you just ask people who you are, and we're not gods, how do you know?" The other party obviously didn't expect Man Bao to dare to refute her, so he stretched out his hand and shook the belt around his waist. The three bumpkins stared at her together, their faces full of innocence. Chiju quietly walked behind the three of them, and whispered in a voice that only they could hear, "The decoration on the waist is owned by the servants of Yizhu Palace." Only then did Man Bao and the others understand, but they still looked at each other innocently, pretending that they didn't understand. The two sides confronted each other in silence for a while, and they seemed to be really ignorant when they met each other, or they might be pretending to be stupid, so they sneered. It turns out that they are bumpkins from other places, no wonder they don't know the rules of Yizhu City. Anywhere else, this is also Dajin. I just need to know the rules of Dajin. For example, beating someone without reason will be punished. Bai Shanbao sneered back, "You are arrogant and domineering, and you obviously don't know each other. As soon as we meet, we will whip people. If we don't send them to the yamen for discipline, others will still treat me as a Dajin person, so I'm so rude." Many people gathered around to watch the excitement, seeing that Bai Shanbao was young but able to say such words. Some people shouted loudly, "Well said." This life seems to have turned on a switch, and many people shouted yes. The maid was a little guilty, but she still squeezed her whip and forced herself to calm down. What is irrelevant? The kite in her hand belongs to our young lady. This is a phoenix kite made by a craftsman. Just the silk cloth. So you're talking about this? Man Bao interrupted her, his face full of displeasure. "We saw this on a tall tree when we went down the mountain to look for a kite, and the leaves covered it. We lost its shape and only saw some colors, and we thought it was ours, so we took a lot of effort to get it off. We lost that yesterday, and we were going to find it today. Then you saw that I took it, shouldn't you beg me to give it to you?" Man Bao interrupted her again, and said quickly, "As soon as I came up, I was shouting and beating again. Whip, who knows who you are?" Everyone looked at the maid and began to discuss, and then looked vaguely at the circle surrounded by a group of young girls and servants behind the maid. The circle spread out, and a beautiful girl of 16 or 17 came out. The other party was dressed in colorful clothes, and it was not easy at first glance. She walked forward with a smile, nodded slightly to Man Bao and the others, and said, "Please forgive me if I have nothing to do with you. This kite is my lady's favorite thing. Please return it." Man Bao smiled back, nodded and said, it's easy to say, even if we don't meet you, we will hand over the lost property to the county government when we return to the city. But the place where the kite landed is high, and the tree is very bad climbing. Our Daji risked his life to take it down." Daji stepped forward and saluted slightly. After a pause, the beautiful maid took out a piece of silver from her purse and said, "This is the reward from Our Lady." Man Bao said, "The reward will be waived. Let your lady say thank you to our family Daji, or give some reward. As for the reward, we will give it when we get home." Daji stood obediently behind. Bai Shanbao nodded again and again, "That's right, it seems that this kite is very important to you. Our Daji has helped your lady a lot, and the rewards can be waived, just say thank you." Next update around 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 574. Let the girl say thank you. Although the beautiful maid was still smiling, her eyes were full of contempt, but there were quite a few people gathered around to watch the excitement. She is not stupid, knowing that these people are eloquent, even if they can be suppressed by arguing, it will not do the young lady much good. So he saluted with a smile on his face, turned around and took 2 ingots of silver, handed them to Daji and said, "Thank you for helping to fetch the kite, this silver is for you." Daji glanced at Bai Shanbao, but did not move. The expression on the beautiful servant girl's face was slightly stagnant. After glancing at the smiling Manbao and Bai Shanbao, she smiled again and said, "This is a thank you gift from my lady." Only then did Bai Shanbao slightly nod his head. Only then did Daji reach out to take it, saluted and backed away. Manbao stuffed the kite into her hand with a smile, and said kindly, "This beautiful sister, you must be careful when flying the kite in the future, don't let it fly away, just fly away, if someone else picks it up again, they have to tell them in a nice voice, how can they throw a whip as soon as they meet?" Manbao said, "It's just that we are small and have a good temper. If we meet someone with a bad temper, what should we do if we fight?" The girl who was holding the whip gritted her teeth, and the pretty servant girl's face was also slightly stiff, but seeing the faces of the people around her agreeing, she held back and responded with a smile, "The girl is right, I will teach you well when I go back." "Teach her." Manbao then let go of his hand and left. The beautiful servant girl watched them go away, the smile on her face remained unchanged, she glanced at the whip-flapping girl, turned around and took the kite back to report. The whip-wielding girl trembled, and followed with a pale face. The teenagers looked at the 3 of Manbao with surprise on their faces, and whispered, "You are so courageous, you are from Yizhu Palace." "So what?" Manbao said, "we didn't do anything wrong." "If you say that about them, aren't you afraid that they will avenge themselves in the future?" Chiju said, "The king of Yizhu dare not say that he is right in Yizhu city, but no one in the city would offend him for such trivial things. When they whipped their whips but didn't hit me, I've already offended them. Forget it, offend them. At worst, I'll go home." Manbao was very thoughtful, "I don't have to be in the benefits, not in the state." Chiju nodded, "It makes sense." But Bai Shanbao turned his head and said to Manbao, "Don't worry, they don't dare, it's just a few servants." What Bai Shanbao said was right, but they really didn't dare. The little princess of Yizhu Wangfu disliked the crowds on the slope, so he asked someone to occupy a good position and set up a curtain early on. Earlier, she was upset when she saw so many people give pointers to her servants despite their failure in the quarrel, so she took them back to the tent first. Seeing Chiu Man come back with the kite, she snorted and asked, "Solve it, gone?" Yes, Chiu Man didn't dare to tell her those annoying words, but just presented the kite and said, "I rewarded them with 20 taels of silver and then sent them away." The little princess didn't know how expensive 20 taels of silver was, and it didn't sound like much anyway, so he sneered and said, "A pariah is a pariah, just for money. Where's Kaiyu?" "Kneeling outside." "Let her go back to the mansion and take 20 lashes for herself." She just went to get a kite, but she threw her face on Kixia Mountain. She glanced at the kite that was presented, and waved it to the ground. "It's just a messy kite, if you lose it, you'll just make another one. If you can get it back, it's fine, but if you don't come back, you'll lose my face. If she wasn't given by my mother, I have to." The princess. Then the little princess stopped talking, waved her hands and said with a sneer, "Take this kite down and burn it, don't let me see it again." Yes, Chiu Man handed the kite to the other girls to take it down. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the little princess picking a whip from a shelf beside her. "Isn't it over?" "What happened in the past?" the little princess said unhappily. "Just now you said that there were many people watching, so you didn't let me do anything. Now that the crowd has dispersed and they have gone far away, you still don't allow me to whip a few times. Princess, today is different. Have you forgotten the Lord's instructions? Chiu Man said. Recently, some nobles may be in Yazhu. We must act cautiously. Just bring this kite back. Why bother to meet a group of young people again? The little princess twitched her hand, but found that she hadn't pulled it out, so she stared at Chiu Man and asked, "It's just a few poor people, if I slap a few times, who can do anything to me?" Princess, they are not necessarily poor people. I think they are dressed like scholars. These days are the days of the government school exams. Maybe they are brought by the students who came to take the exam. It is always bad to make enemies rashly. It's just a group of poor scholars, can you still compare to my father? The little princess said angrily. Chiu Man, are you my slave or theirs? Chiu Man lowered her head and knelt down. The servant is naturally the servant of the princess, and it is precisely because of this that the slave has to persuade the princess. Princess, if you go out now, the prince will know. The little princess was so angry that he dropped his whip, kicked down the desk behind him, and said angrily, "Go home. No more playing." Chiu Man bowed her head and answered yes. And the three man bows, who had already walked back to the grassland they occupied, had exchanged addresses with Chiju and the others, and agreed that they could play together again when they had time. Although Chiju and the other 7 teenagers still insisted that their kite was ugly, it was strange that they didn't hate them so much now. So he generously told the 3 of them the address and name of their academy. But Chiju felt that even if they didn't say anything, the 3 of them would always be able to find them. Who made their husbands and other people's husbands happen to be brothers. The 3 of them need to know that it is only a word of effort. Mr. Zhuang didn't know about the conflict between them and others. Seeing that 2 groups of them merged into one group, and the 2 groups came back talking and laughing, he looked at Huang Chuan and smiled, feeling happy. Then the 2 groups played together. Jojo Lang pulled the kite for a long time, and his hands were about to cramp. As soon as he saw them coming back, he immediately returned the kite to them, and his hands and feet were paralyzed. Man Bao and the others played for a long time, and fought the kite for a long time. Finally, under the urging of Mr. Zhuang, they reluctantly took the kite away and wanted to say goodbye to Chiju and the others. The 7 teenagers said, "To be honest, your kite is really ugly." Man Bao, we won. 7 teenagers, the cutting is not good, is it because you didn't draw it well when you drew it? Bai Shanbao, our kites fly higher than yours. 7 teenagers, the color is even more careless. It's not good looking in the first place. It's even more ugly when you paint it like that. Bai Erlang, our kites are still made by ourselves. From the skeleton to the canvas to the kite strings, the ones you spend money on can't fly better than ours. The 10 people successfully tore apart the friendship that had been sticking together so easily. Everyone hummed to each other, and followed their husbands back to their respective homes. The next update will be around 9 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 575. Back home, Daji took out the 2 silver ingots and gave them to his young master. Bai Shanbao waved his hand and said, "This is for you, just take it." Daji responded and put away the money. Jojo Lang went out to buy food. Man Bao was squatting in the kitchen boiling water. Bai Erlang lazily dragged a broom over, handed it to Bai Shanbao and said, "Here, clean the yard quickly." Sir said, "Spring is too wet, now Qingming is over, we have to clean the house again. It's late today, let's sweep the yard first, and then clean the house tomorrow." The 2 teenagers took a broom and walked around the yard perfunctorily, counting it as having cleaned it. But their luck was not so good the next day. With Mr. Zhuang watching, they couldn't be lazy anymore. Jojo Lang borrowed 2 pairs of wooden barrels from someone who didn't know, and directly took Daji to carry water, while the 3 of Manbao tied up their hair, covered their mouths and noses, and then began to carry rags inside and outside the house clean up. Before they moved in, they simply cleaned it up. After the wet spring, there were many dirty places in the house. Especially behind and under the cabinet, and inside and under the bed, it was dirty. The three of them climbed down to the inside, and soon they were covered with dust. The three of them are so busy, not to mention forgetting about the kite conflict yesterday, they even forgot about the exam. After a long day of work, the three of them were extremely tired. It didn't seem obvious to them, but the room that felt a lot more comfortable let out a sigh of relief. Jojo Lang and Daji, whose shoulders hurt from carrying water, also breathed a sigh of relief. Mr. Zhuang stood at the door of the study and looked at it, nodded in satisfaction, then looked at the 5 people who were about to collapse from exhaustion and said, "Okay, wash up and go to sleep, the school will make an announcement tomorrow, we will return early in the morning, I'm going to the proctor to see the grades. Although you may not pass the exam, you have to go and have a look, and the supervisor will post some good articles, just enough for the 3 disciples to learn." The 3 of Bai Shanbao were shocked, and then they remembered, yes, it seems that the results will come out tomorrow. Bai Shanbao touched his little heart, and whispered to his 2 friends, "What should I do? I seem to be a little nervous, will I not be able to sleep at night?" Man Bao said, "Not at all, I think you forgot about the exam these 2 days. Bai Erlang said, "How about I go to sleep with you?" "No, you'll kick people when you sleep," Bai Shanbao refused him, and then sighed, "Forget it, let's just recite the book with your eyes closed." But he didn't have time to do this at all, he just lay down on the bed, and he felt sore in his waist, back, and hands and feet, and then he couldn't help but yawned, and then he yawned again, his eyes became moist, and then he felt drowsy come, he tried to open his eyes, but found that it was a bit futile, so he fell asleep as he wanted. Although sleepy, they went to bed early and woke up early the next day, especially since they were always early risers. So as soon as Bai Shanbao opened his eyes, it wasn't long before he opened the door. Man Bao also stretched his waist and went out. The 2 of them looked at each other and then went to see Bai Erlang's door by coincidence. There was no movement at the door. The 2 of them tiptoed to the window, lay down on it and tried hard to look in. Daji. Jojo Lang drifted past them, suddenly stretched out his hand and patted their shoulders heavily, and yelled "ah" in their ears. The 2 people who were doing bad things also yelled "ah." Mr. Zhuang, who was washing his face in the main room, was so frightened that he almost knocked over the tub. And Bai Erlang, who was sleeping soundly in the room, also yelled, sat up, turned around, accidentally rolled over from the bed, and made a thud. Mr. Zhuang glanced out, took a deep breath, put down the towel slowly, and told himself that this disciple was taken in by himself, dear. Because of this burst of roaring, the entire small courtyard broke away from the quiet atmosphere in an instant, and became lively with crackling noises, and followed the oil pan of water, which was too lively. Bai Erlang, who got up from the ground, was so angry that he didn't wear his coat, so he rushed out after dragging his shoes, chasing the 2 of them to beat him. Bai Shanbao and Man Bao ran around laughing and joking, and the whole yard was filled with their noise. Mr. Zhuang wiped his hands and brought out the water. Seeing the 3 people making such a fuss, he shook his head and said, "I'll leave for the supervisor in 3/4 of an hour. Shiro, you can buy breakfast and come back now." Zhou Lang, who had already washed up, bowed in response, and turned to go out. Only then did Man Bao realize that the 4th brother was the culprit, and hurriedly said to Bai Erlang, who was chasing her and beating him, "It was the 4th brother who scared us, so we yelled." As soon as Bai Erlang turned his head, Jojo Lang slipped away in a flash. When they packed up, had breakfast and went out, it was not too early or too late, exactly 3/4 of an hour later. Daji and Zhou Lang drove out of the carriage and sent the 4 masters and apprentices outside the supervisor. Many students have already come there, and they are all standing in front of the door waiting. Relying on their thin stature, the 3 of Manbao directly jumped over the people in front and got to the front. Zhou Lang and Daji have to keep up, but Daji is skilled and can squeeze in, but Zhou Lang can't squeeze in. If he squeezes hard, the scholars will stare at him. This made Zhou Lang very embarrassed. He had no choice but to back out and stand beside Mr. Zhuang, watching eagerly. The 3 of Manbao got to the front. As soon as the time came, the door of the supervisor opened, and someone came out with a red cloth. The school officials struck the gong 3 times, announcing that this year's admission list had been released, and then he would read his name and place of origin from top to bottom. There are 2 copies of the red cloth, one for the school officials to follow, and one for hanging directly in front of the bulletin board. For a piece of red cloth, the Yamen servants drove back the examines who came to see the rankings, and then hung the cloth up very casually, let it fall directly, and then turned around to hang another cloth. They have nothing to worry about, after all, they have to hang up once a year, and they are used to it, okay. But the students standing in front of the bulletin board are different. This is related to their future, and most of them have not participated in many times. As soon as the red cloth fell, everyone couldn't help but squeeze together to see it. Manbao and the others were also squeezed and took 2 steps up, and then their eyes fell on the end in unison, wanting to look from the end to the front. Who knew it was such a coincidence that the 3 of them saw Bai Shan's name at a glance? Manbao was startled, and then shouted, "Bai Shan, you passed the exam." Bai Erlang laughed loudly, and said cheerfully, "Bai Shan, you are actually the last one, how embarrassing." Bai Shanbao also widened his eyes, "Why is it the last place? I think my writing is pretty good. Are everyone so good?" The scholars behind Bai Shanbao who haven't found their names yet. Bamboo, I tried my best to open my eyelids, opened my eyes, and opened my eyes again, but in the end it was in vain, so good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 576. It took Manbao and the 3 of them a lot of effort to squeeze out, and they found that it was even more difficult to squeeze out than to squeeze in. So that when the 3 of them came out, their clothes were wrinkled and their hair was messed up. Manbaojiang stroked his hair, and happily said to Mr. Zhuang, "Sir, the 2nd junior brother passed the exam." Mr. Zhuang was surprised, "Really? Really, once the list is released, we can see it at a glance." Mr. Zhuang's eyes were wide open, and his heart was beating violently. "I saw it at a glance, that's. 2nd junior brother is very lucky. He is in the last place. We saw it at first sight." Mr. Zhuang. Mr. Zhuang's excited mood slowly returned to calm, and the unexpected joy finally swept over him at this moment. He was very happy, and couldn't help reaching out to touch Bai Shanbao's head, and praised, not bad, although it is last place, but enrolled 2 years earlier than we planned. This is an entrance examination, not a Jinshi examination. Mr. Zhuang thinks that ranking is not that important, especially since Bai Shan is still so young, he has countless possibilities to enter a government school. He encouraged him, "When you go to the government school, study hard with the gentleman there. If you don't understand something, come back and ask your teacher. After 2 or 3 years, you will be able to catch up with the people in front of you." At this time, Bai Shan also threw away the depression of being the last one, and nodded fiercely. He also knew that there were many good gentlemen in the government school, and those gentlemen's knowledge was no worse than Mr. Zhuang's. He could get the teachings of so many gentlemen at once, and his progress would definitely be faster. What's more, he still has an advantage over other students. He is young, and there is Mr. Zhuang standing behind him. But Bai Shanbao is also very loyal, and said to Man Bao Bai Erlang, I will teach you when I come back from my lectures at the government school. Bai Erlang thanked Buman, I think listening to Mr. S class is enough. Man Bao thought for a while that he still had teacher Mo's class, so he said, I can discuss it with you, but the class will be waived, I am very busy. Bai Shanbao despised them, I think you are just lazy, be careful that you won't catch up with me in the future. Bai Erlang was not stimulated at all, and said, I was never able to catch up with you. Man Bao said, I don't care, anyway, you can't know what I know, but I can learn what you know. Bai Shanbao, who doesn't know much about medical skills, but only has a little knowledge of herbal medicine. He paused and asked, are you going to be a doctor in the future? I don't know, I just think it's a good mood to save people. Man Bao said, there are so many things I want to do, and I don't necessarily want to be a doctor. Jojo Lang immediately rushed up from behind, and said with encouragement, Man Bao, it's good to be a doctor. If you can learn medical skills well, you can go to the county town to buy a shop and open a pharmacy in the future. All the medicines grown in our family will be given to you at a low price. What do you think, how many doctors do you think we have in a county? To see a patient, even if you don't prescribe a prescription, you still get 8 cents. That's a worthless business, not to mention you prescribe prescriptions to make money. Man Bao said, that's so good, why don't you learn it, fourth brother? Me? I'll just forget about it, Jojo Lang said, I think I grow medicines, and just sell the ingredients to you doctors. He was also curious, but Man Bao took out the appointment map for him to memorize, and within 2 days Zhou Lang gave up. He didn't even read all the words. When he saw those words, he got a headache, dizzy, and was so dizzy that he couldn't think. Mr. Zhuang said, okay, now that you know the ranking, there is no need to listen to the list here, let's go back first, and I will invite you to Gangxianglu for lunch. The few people were stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help cheering. Jojo Lang also forgot about studying medicine in an instant, and said happily, Sir, there must be a lot of people going to eat today, do you want me to make a reservation in advance? Mr. Zhuang nodded with a smile, all right, let's book one more seat. I'll invite Mr. Lan to come with me. Thursday Lang agreed happily. Mr. Zhuang didn't go home, but asked Daji to take Manbao and the 3 home and told them to read at home, while he and Jojo Lang went to Ian's house to invite Lan Cheng. Manbao and the 3 agreed innocently, and happily climbed into the carriage. They decided to buy some delicious food on the way home and celebrate in private first. Jojo Lang didn't think much about it, and after taking Mr. Zhuang to Ian's house in a carriage, he happily drove the carriage to Gangxianglu to fix the location. The joy on Mr. Zhuang's face when he entered Ian's house faded slightly. He and Lan Cheng entered the study room, and the first thing he said was to ask, what's going on? How did Bai Shan get picked? Lan Cheng was stunned for a moment and then asked with a smile, why, you don't have confidence in your disciple and think he shouldn't be selected? Mr. Zhuang smiled wryly and said, of course I know he is good, but for the last big question, he answered it decently at the beginning, but then it is a bit outrageous at the end. The academic officials have always looked down on arrogant and conceited students. He didn't finish his answer, but he asked back with sharp words. No matter how good his answer was, the academic officials would not accept him. Besides, I know my students, and his previous answer is not amazing. Yan. Lan Cheng nodded and said, in the past, he would definitely have lost the election, but these 2 years are different. Lan Cheng paused, pondered for a while before saying, after the flood in Yazhu, the government school lost many students. Mr. Zhuang was taken aback, they. Lan Cheng was a little sad, nodded his head and said, Some of them disappeared when the disaster happened, and most of them disappeared when they went to rescue the disaster. The part that survived was disheartened, and most of them left the school to return to their hometown, or went to study elsewhere. Then why did you only take 150 people this year? I don't think you took many people in the past 2 years. Lan Cheng shook his head and said, 150 people are only the number of people on the surface. In addition, we will take another 50 people this year, all of whom are children of officials of the 6th grade or above in Jianese Road, aged 10 or more. More than 5 and 25. Mr. Zhuang was surprised, so many? Then, they will not be enrolled for the time being, and they will be enrolled only if they pass the first exam, otherwise they will have to pay a lot of money, Lan Cheng said. In fact, the situation this year is a little better, because there are many students for reference. Last year and the year before that, we didn't have enough places to recruit, and the conditions had been relaxed, but there were not many people who passed the exam. Lanchindao, some well-known talents would rather go to Guanyi Road, Jiangnan Road, and Shannon Road to study than stay in Yizhu. It's only 2 or 3 years now, so I don't see much, but in 2 or 3 years, we send fewer and fewer students to the Imperial College, and fewer students will take the Jinshi examination, and it will show a declining trend by then. Bai Shan's paper is not very well written, but he also has 2 strengths that others don't have. Mr. Zhuang raised his eyebrows. Which 2? Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 577. 1 is that he is young. He is only 12 years old this year. It's okay for a young man to be arrogant. The important thing is that he is talented. The other is that he is originally from Guanyi Dao, Lan Cheng said. In the past 2 years, Guanyi Dao took advantage of the flood in Yizhu and took away many good seedlings from us. Mr. Zhuang said expressionlessly, at the end of the day, someone has chilled their hearts. Otherwise, who would want to leave their hometown to study? Lan Cheng lowered his red eyes, suppressed the thoughts in his heart and said, we are just a bunch of poor teachers, what can we do? Mr. Zhuang didn't speak. In short, Lan Cheng suppressed all his thoughts, and smiled with him. It's fair for him to be selected, don't worry. Mr. Zhuang breathed a sigh of relief, nodded and said, that's good. Lan Cheng smiled and said, I see that your disciple is very proud. You should also teach him and let him enter the government school to keep a low profile, so as not to provoke the dissatisfaction of other students and the dislike of the school officials. Mr. Zhuang smiled lightly and said, I don't think he is arrogant, but confident, which is pretty good. Lan Cheng shook his head. You used to be the most humble, how did you learn the bad habits of your 3 disciples? Mr. Zhuang didn't speak. Lan Cheng didn't persuade him anymore, because after thinking about it carefully, Mr. Zhuang's current behavior is not bad. Mr. Zhuang simply invited him to Gangxianglu for dinner. After thinking for a while, Lan Cheng shook his head and said, forget it, although I didn't take the papers, I screened them. Now that the rankings have just been released, we should stop eating and drinking, so as not to be misunderstood in the eyes of interested people. He said, perhaps it is because the conditions for the selection of candidates were relaxed in the past 2 years. There are a lot of people who came to the exam this year. Originally, the questions we gave were not different from those of previous years. But a big man came from somewhere and took the last 2 exams. The big topic has been changed. Lan Cheng said, in this exchange, we don't have to worry about which one we should take and which one we should not take, but it also hurt many students. Bai Shan is the youngest among them. When the ranking was decided before, there were the school officer questioned it, so let's keep a low profile recently. Mr. Zhuang had no problem at all, he nodded in response, but he still couldn't help asking, according to you, someone's test paper was better than Bai Shan's, but they were left behind. That's not true. Although Wenwu is not the first, everyone has a different opinion, but overall, no one who loses the election can beat him. Even in my opinion, his ranking can actually be slightly higher. Yes, Lan Cheng said, but you also know that the government school exams are not vague, and there are some favors. Mr. Zhuang understood as soon as he heard it. He waved his hand and said, then don't worry, my family's Bai Shan ability is there, what are you afraid of? Having said that, Mr. Zhuang called Bai Shanbao to the study when he returned home, and said, Fushui is a university hall with many students and complicated backgrounds. It is different from studying here as a teacher, so you have to be careful, you know. Bai Shanbao thought for a while, then asked, is there any faction dispute, a battle between good and bad at reading? Mr. Zhuang blinked, you know. Of course I know. Not only did he know, but he also participated in it. Before studying with Mr. Zhuang, he studied in his family's ethnology for nearly a year. What didn't he experience at that time? Mr. Zhuang probably also thought of his previous experience. He rubbed his forehead and said, it's different from that. In his opinion, the fights between the little ones and the fights in the government schools are nothing more than trivial, and really not worth mentioning. He said, although we have no power and connections in Yizhu, don't admit to being cowardly when you enter the government school. Once you are cowardly, you will be weak in courage. If you are weak in courage, others will want to bully you more and more. Mr. Zhuang has experienced it personally, but it is a pity that he did not know this truth when he was young, and when he realized this truth, it was too late for him to make changes. So he can only teach his disciples at this moment, you are fine now, but in the government school, don't argue with others, let alone fight with others. Mr. Zhuang paused for a while and said, even if you want to fight, you must not do it yourself first, you know. Bai Shanbao nodded again and again. He had a deep understanding of this. I know, the one who strikes first is wrong, and you can't fight with a girl. Mr. Zhuang, are all the girls in the world full of treasures? Don't worry, no girls will fight with you in the government school. As a student who has been in a government school for many years, Mr. Zhuang knows too well what the school rules are, and he knows what the unspoken rules are. Of course, at this time, he didn't teach his disciples wholeheartedly, but only told him some things that he needed to pay attention to. There are some problems, so it's natural to talk about them. And everyone has a different path to take. Some things have been experienced, and it will be interesting to recall them later. Knowing nothing, Bai Shanbao consciously received a bunch of advice from his husband, and was so moved that he turned around and went to play with Man Bao and Bai Erlang. When the two little friends asked about it, he said, I think Fuxiu is a dragon's pond and a tiger's den, Sir is very worried about me. Bai Erlang said, isn't Fuxiu just a place to study? You won't fight, right? You've always been good at reading, so there won't be any problems. Man Bao glanced at him contemptuously and said, our school is also a place to study, and you ended up fighting. You hit me too, and Bai Shan hit me too. So it's a wrong sentence to say that you don't fight in the place where you study. Man Bao said, there are so many students in the government school. If they fight, I'm afraid it will be even worse. So, second junior brother, when you go to the government school, you must hurry up and make like-minded friends, and then we can fight together. Bai Shanbao said, I really can't beat me, can't I know how to run? Yes, I ran to find the master of the government school. They would not dare to fight in front of the master, Man Bao said, we will help you after we come out. Daji listened to their discussion and was silent. He was thinking about fighting before he started school. How could this be? Bai Shanbao's admission was beyond everyone's expectations, including the Bai family in Qilai village. So Daji went out that day, not only to deliver the letter back, but also to send the letter written by the young master to the old lady. And Manbao also talked to Jojo Lang, who had made a reservation. Fourth brother, Shanbao has been admitted to the government school, so I will stay in Yizhu to study with my husband. Zhou Lang obviously didn't think about this question, for a while. The first thing he asked was, how much will it cost? There are people here and there, do you want to go back and ask Dad for money? Man Bao thought for a while, then shook his head and said, who said we didn't enter? Our farm is still there, and we will have money after the summer and autumn harvests, but you, fourth brother, you can't make money here. Zhou Lang rubbed his chin, and said thoughtfully, actually, it's not that I can't make money. Next update around 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 578. Man Bao looked at him. Zhou Lang looked around, and asked mysteriously, Man Bao, what do you think I brought all the remaining medicinal materials here when I go home? Is there not much left at home? It's not much, but we can grow more, Zhou Lang said. Ginger pieces can be planted in the vegetable garden or in the sand. Many dry lands in the village are like this. It is not good to grow wheat, but also to grow beans there is not much harvest, so it is good to grow ginger. He said, in the past 2 years, because our family has made money growing ginger, many people in the village want to follow suit. I noticed that the ginger used in Yazhu is much more than that in Lujiang County. Man Bao said helplessly, fourth brother, Zhangke loves fatter than beans, you use poor land to grow ginger. Anyway, it's not our family's planting. When the time comes, they will plant it. They will naturally fertilize it to make money, Zhou Lang said. The main reason is that it is still early. I will go back and talk about it. I can replant it in winter. It's just ready to be collected, and I'll be able to go back and pull a cart every now and then. Man Bao thought about it, and felt that this idea was really good. Ginger can be kept, even if fresh ginger can't be sold, it can be grown for a year, and the next year it can be dried and sold as dry ginger. That's right, this is a business that is sure to make money without losing money. Zhou Lang's eyes sparkled, and privet fruit, I have made an agreement with the shopkeepers of several pharmacies, and when the privet fruit can be received in autumn, we will pay the agreed price, sell it to them. They want a lot, and our family can't provide it at all, so we can ask people in the village to help plant it together. Anyway, every family has mountains. When the time comes, I'll collect it from them and sell it to Yazhu City, and I'll be able to make another fortune. Man Bao, then you have to teach them how to cook. Zhou Lang waved his hand and said, it's simple. I'll discuss it with my parents when I go back. If they want to learn, I will teach them. If they don't learn, I will admit them at a low price. Our family will make it ourselves. Then you go back. Zhou Lang was overjoyed, and said happily, it's settled, then I'll go back. Well, let's go back. Zhou Lang put his arm around her shoulder and said, don't worry, Yaomei, I'll just go back and say something, and I'll be back in 2 days. Man Bao nodded, indicating that he understood. Zhou Lang was going home, and the first thing everyone thought about was, what should we do with dinner after that? What about the wash water? What if there are horses to feed? Mr. Zhuang glanced back and forth at the 3 disciples, and finally told Zhou Lang, Silang, go early and come back early. Zhou Lang responded and asked, is there anything you need me to bring back? There really are. Mr. Zhuang will not talk about it. He has been out for a long time, and he didn't go home until Qingming. Right now, he really has something to bring back to his son. Although Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang sent a letter back through Daji, they didn't know that it was their own man who delivered the letter. They only thought that he was looking for a business traveler, so they only delivered the letter without sending anything. But now that Zhou Lang is going back, they have more things to bring back, but they asked Zhou Lang to bring more things when he came back. Bai Shanbao said, I made a list of books, fourth brother, you give it to my grandmother and ask her to collect all those books and send them to me. There are also boxes for my silver and boxes for my toys, all of which are indispensable. Bai Erlang also asked for many things. Man Bao, who didn't take it seriously at first, heard this, and immediately asked, "Fourth brother, can you bring me the box at the end of my bed? There are all my toys in my collection, and my bookshelf. Bring me all the books and things." When Mr. Zhuang heard it, he was ready to move. "I have a lot of books left in the Bai family. After I came to Yazhu, I had to go to the bookstore to read many books. It was very inconvenient. And at that time I only brought the simplest a set of pen, ink, paper, and inkstone. Books are very expensive, and so are the four treasures of the study." Although his income is now higher than before, Mr. Zhuang is still reluctant to buy what he already owns again. During this period of time, when he needed to read certain books, he would go to the bookstore to read them. In fact, it would be best if he could bring his own books. Everyone looked at Jojo Lang expectantly. "Jojo Lang, is this the basis for going back home to start a business, or is he going back to move?" But in the eyes of the master and apprentice, what else could he do besides agreeing? On the second day, Jojo Lang finally drove the carriage away full of sorrow. He was not sure that the carriage could hold so many things. Daji sent the man to the alley with great sympathy, and then waved goodbye to him. Mr. Zhuang is preparing for Bai Shanbao's admission. There are two types of students in government schools. Those who live in the dormitory, those who live outside. Most of the students from other places will live in the dormitory supervisor, and only need to pay a small part of the room fee every year, which is much cheaper than the rent outside. Mr. Zhuang has lived there for many years. There are also some who live outside, especially the local students. Naturally, they go home from dawn to dusk, or they rent nearby. Mr. Zhuang also wanted Bai Shan to live in the dormitory supervisor, but he took a look at the current situation of the dormitory supervisor, and learned from Lan Cheng that there are so many students specially recruited this year, so he simply let Bai Shan come back to live. Up. Of course, the main reason is that Daji came to talk to him. The servants cannot follow the government school, so Daji can't get in. If Bai Shan lived in the government school, he would not be able to go out easily, and he would have to do the laundry and meals by himself. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that if he is in danger, Daji will not know, let alone help him. So Daji proposed to let his young master live outside, so that he can still see people every morning and evening, and know whether he is being bullied or not, and whether he is in danger. After all, with his young master's temper, he was still very afraid that he would be sacked in the government school. Mr. Zhuang has already noticed that the Bai family is very concerned about Bai Shan's safety, otherwise he would not have kept Daji by his side. Daji is not a book boy, let alone an ordinary boy. He has seen him fighting with others on the roof. So Mr. Zhuang agreed after a little thought. The list is out, but there are still a few days before the start of school registration. Mr. Zhuang took Bai Shan to go through the formalities. First of all, he went to the supervisor to apply for the student status. As a student admitted to a government school through regular channels, he still has a monthly rice subsidy, not much, but enough for himself. Even for ordinary students, there will be some surplus. This is also a policy of the imperial court to support education. It is only for students who are formally admitted to government schools. Other students who are recommended for admission or even have no school status are not eligible for this preferential policy. This is why Mr. Zhuang had to be admitted to a government school back then. Not to mention the best educational resources in the entire Jianese road here, and you don't need to complete the training, and your own food and needs are also taken care of. If I copy some books and write some articles by myself, I can still support my family. Of course, Bai Shan, who is only 12 years old and has a wealthy family, does not need to worry about this. The next update will be around 9 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 579. Zhou Lang was surrounded by a group of children just after he entered the village in his carriage, including the third and fourth sons of their family. When the two saw the fourth uncle, they pulled the carriage and were about to climb into the carriage. Zhou Lang slipped the belts of the two of them and pulled them onto the carriage, teaching him a lesson. The carriage is going to Mr. Bai's house, what are you doing climbing up? Having said that, Zhou Lang arrived at Bai's house surrounded by a group of children. If the car was driven by Bai's family, everyone would not be so excited, and the children would avoid it on purpose, but when Zhou Lang drove it, everyone would not be so alienated. Two courageous children reached out to touch the horse after the car stopped, so frightened that Zhou Lang hurriedly waved them away. Watch out for the horse's hooves. The servants of the Bai family greeted them and helped hold the horse. Zhou Lang first put down his and Man Bao's things, and then began to distribute things between the two families. This is Bai Erlang's, this is Bai Shanbao's, this is Mr. Zhuang's. After the division was completed, Zhou Lang stuffed his and Man Bao's things to a group of children and asked them to take them home first, while he went into Bai's house to talk to Master Bai. Zhou Lang took out a stack of papers from his bosom, handed them over respectfully, and said, Master Bai, these two sons and Mr. Zhuang entrusted me to bring them back. Master Bai took it and turned it over, his eyelids twitched, and asked, Mr. Zhuang has decided to stay in Yizhu. They knew the news of Bai Shan's admission to the middle school yesterday. Master Bai was wondering whether Mr. Zhuang would bring Bai back, but today they found out that they plan to live in Yizhu for a long time. Zhou Lang nodded and said, yes, Mr. Zhuang said that Master Bai Shan wants to teach, and Master Bai and my sister-in-law cannot leave him, so we should all live in Yizhu. Although Master Bai is very reluctant to part with his younger son, he thinks it's not bad. Now his eldest son is studying in Mianzhou's government school, which is not as good as Yizhu's. If Erlang can be admitted to Yizhu's government school, well, this possibility is a bit low, but it would be good to let him learn more about Yizhu. Here's what to bring. Master Bai frowned, there are too many things to bring, can you carry them all by yourself? Zhou Lang said, as long as it can be tied to the carriage, I can take it. Master Bai glanced at him and said, I mean, is it safe for you to take so many things on the road alone? Zhou Lang was stunned and asked, isn't it safe? Our journey is quite safe. Master Bai pointed the table with his fingers, and then said with a smile, it's not urgent, it will take 2 or 3 days for us to pack up. When do you plan to leave? I'm going to stay at home for 3 or 4 days, Mr. Bai can clean up slowly, and MRS Bai next door. I'll go and talk. Zhou Lang became happy, he wanted to go home a long time ago. If he ran to the next door after talking to Master Bai, it would definitely take a long time, it would be best if Master Bai would do it for him. Zhou Lang explained everything that should be explained clearly, turned around and ran home. Old Zhou's family had been waiting in the yard for a long time, and when they saw him come back, they immediately surrounded him and asked questions, and Fang, who was holding the child, was called to the outermost. Of course, the old Zhou would not squeeze with a group of people. He coughed twice, and when he saw that no one was paying attention to him, he drove away loudly, okay, everyone disperses, there is no work to do, is it? Everyone dispersed a little bit, and the old Zhou frowned and asked Zhou Lang, why did you come back suddenly? Where is Manbao? Zhou Lang smiled at Fang Shi, took his son from her arms, hugged him and sat beside his father, saying, Manbao is studying with Mr. Zhuang, Dad, Master Shanbao of the Bai family has been admitted to a government school, Mr. Zhuang wants to stay in Yizhu to take them, and Manbao also stays behind. Old Zhou frowned, then what are you doing back here? I'll come back to get some things, and I'll talk to my family about something. Jojo Lang said that he didn't come back blindly, and he gave a rough overview of the things he wanted to bring back this time, and said, besides, I also want to give away the rest of the family. Take the old ginger and privet seeds from my hometown. Dad, you don't know, the medicinal materials in Yazoo City are a little more expensive than those in the county. Old Jotiu, I knew that we sold so many medicines to shopkeeper Zheng, and the price must have been lowered. How much is the price in Yazoo City? Not necessarily, about 2 to 3 wen, but a caddy is so much more expensive. 100 caddies, 1,000 caddies are much more expensive. Old Joe glanced at him. Do you have 1,000 caddies of medicinal materials? Jojo Lang rubbed his nose, and said embarrassingly, there is no such thing now. Won't there be more of that kind? Joe Dallin on the side immediately said, Father, why don't we take out the remaining dry land in Xiaoling to plant ginger, but this year the beans have been planted, so we can only wait for the next year. Jojo Lang said, there are also ligustrum lucidum seeds, which can be planted on the mountains, not even on dry land. Not only our family can grow it, but people in the village can also grow it. When the time comes, we will collect it and sell it, and we can make some money. Old Joe frowned, it's so big, what if it can't be sold? Jojo Lang, if you can't sell it, you can eat it at home. Anyway, this ginger is edible. Everyone. Old Joe asked, what did Man Bao say? Man Bao said yes. Jojo Lang said, Father, you see that Man Bao said yes, then it will definitely work. Old Jotiu pondered for a while, then nodded, and sighed, I haven't seen Man Bao for more than a month, so I'm panicking. But Man Bao didn't think about you, Jojo Lang secretly thought. In Yazoo City, the sister-in-law was the brother and sister who thought the most, and Man Bao occasionally thought about his mother, and Jojo Lang thought about his wife and children. Thinking of this, Jojo Lang raised his head and smiled at Fang Shi. Old Jotiu just saw it, frowned and asked, you're back, what about Man Bao? Oh, Dad, Man Bao and Mr. Zhuang live together, 5 people live together, what are you worried about? But which one of them seems to be able to take care of others? Old Joe said, you are back. What should Man Bao do if he needs hot water to wash? What should he do if he has dirty clothes? And what should he do if he needs to eat? Jojo Lang didn't dare to tell him that they bought their meals from outside. He just said, don't worry, they can boil water and wash clothes now. I don't need these trivial matters. What? Old Joe exclaimed, you still let your sister wash clothes? The water is so cold, you don't know that she is weak, she has never washed clothes at home. Jojo Lang, this is what Mr. Zhuang asked for. Qian Shi, who had been silent all this time, also glanced at him and said, what are you shouting for? Man Bao is not young anymore, what's wrong with the laundry? She said, if she was at home, she would have to learn how to cook with her sister-in-law now. Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 580. Ginger survives very well, as long as there is no drought or water logging, it can grow, and if it is fertilized enough, it can still grow well, so even if it is already mid-April, it can still be sown again. Old Joe came forward and talked with several families who had a good relationship. The next day, they took out their hoes and hoed the sides of some dry land, and decided to replant some ginger on the side. After all, it's too late to open up wasteland now, and most of the dry land has grown wheat and melon beans, so we can't pull up the things that have been planted, can we? But what Lao Zhou said also moved them very much. Their family will transport the ginger to Yazoo for sale, and they will collect the ginger with them at that time. Although the price will be cheaper, but the price of ginger is there, no matter how cheap it is, it will not be much cheaper. The old Zhou family can't cheat them too much, can they? So they agreed without thinking too much. As for the ginger seeds, I will borrow some from Lao Zhou's house for the time being, and return them after autumn. The old Joe's family also started to go up the mountain with sickles and hoes, and decided to expand the privet tree. At this moment, May has not yet arrived, and the tree planting is easy to survive. It's just that they all feel that it is too slow to cut off the branches for planting. After all, you have to guarantee the fruit in autumn, so you can't cut too much. So Jojo Lang couldn't help looking at Ligastrom, and asked Jojo Lang, "Did Man Bao say that this kind of seed can be grown?" "No, I'll ask her later." Jojo Lang felt sorry for it. Joe Dallin said, "Even if the seeds can be planted, we don't have any seeds right now, don't worry." Jojo Lang looked at the dried privet. Joe Dallin laughed, "That privet seed has been scalded, even if you don't know it well, you can't grow it, right?" Jojo Lang thought about it, and put the matter aside for the time being. At this time, the busy spring has come to an end, and the winter wheat will be harvested soon, and then they will have to get busy again, so while they are free now, they will solve these trivial matters. Old Joe Tiu asked Jojo Lang, "Are you planning to find some work when you go to Yizhu?" Jojo Lang coughed lightly, and said, "That's the plan, otherwise Man Bao and I spent so much money outside, we couldn't keep taking what we had at home." Old Joe Tiu nodded, "That's the idea. You establish a good relationship with the shopkeeper of the pharmacy over there. When the autumn and winter medicines come out, you can sell them directly. Usually, go out to see if there is any work, and at least earn some subsidies. Home use." He couldn't help muttering, "You were supposed to take care of Man Bao, but you didn't take care of her much." Jojo Lang, "He is also very busy, okay, he has to work hard inside and out." Yat at the side immediately said, "Grandpa, Grandma, let me take care of my sister-in-law." Old Joe looked at Yat in surprise, "You?" She also looked at Arya. Arya grabbed the corner of her clothes nervously, her face flushed slightly, but she still nodded and said, "Yes, I will take care of my sister-in-law. If possible, I will also find a job in Yizhu City." Feng Shi immediately said, "The family doesn't need you to show your face and do hard work." Old Zhutu immediately said, "Who said she was going to do hard work? Didn't she keep accounts in the old master's shop, and also learned abacus from Mr. Zhuang?" Not to mention Feng's, even Jojo Lang couldn't help but said, "Father, who would hire a girl for the accountant?" Old Zhou Tiu snorted, looked at his old wife, and whispered, "Man Bao can neither cook nor wash clothes, and he has never left his family since he was a child." Qian said, "Let the fourth brother take her to have a look. Anyway, there are enough people in the family, and she can't help much at home. Why don't you go to Yizhu City to help do something? Don't say anything else, help the fourth, it's okay to manage." Jojo Lang immediately said, "Mother, I can keep accounts myself. Don't mention your memorization is messy, and there are typos, don't mention us, I'm afraid even Man Bao can't understand, so let Arya help you." Jojo Lang was puzzled, "Is my memory so bad?" Everyone nods together. Jojo Lang pursed his mouth and said nothing. Before going to bed at night, Mrs. Feng quietly pulled Arya into the room and asked, "Why do you suddenly want to go to Yizhu City? Didn't you do well in your aunt's shop?" "Mother, there is a big aunt, a big brother and a big sister in the shop. I don't need me to write and keep accounts. I want to go to Yizhu City to follow my little aunt. Maybe I can do something." "You are so stupid, what do you learn to keep accounts as a girl?" Feng said bitterly, "Didn't I ask you to learn cooking from your aunt? One can open a shop. You can't be an accountant if you learn to keep accounts." "I have learned it, and my aunt also taught me carefully, but the dishes I make are not as delicious as my sister's. It is because of the serious study that Arya is so depressed. 2 stoves, 2 pots, dishes, it's the same." The eldest aunt stood behind us, pointing me and the eldest sister at the same time, but it was very strange, the dishes I made were just a little bit worse. Jojo Lang coughed lightly and comforted his daughter. This kind of thing also depends on talent, so don't be discouraged, you are like an ant. Arya nodded approvingly. When Feng heard this, he couldn't help stretching out his hand to pinch him. Zhou Hulang's expression changed, and his daughter was in front of him again, so he didn't dare to cry out. However, Feng Shi didn't mention the matter of learning cooking. She really understood the feeling that she couldn't learn it no matter how hard she tried. Speaking of which, Arya's cooking skills are better than hers. Feng sighed, wondering if Sanya would be like her. Then you went to Yazhu City. I must listen to my sister, Arya said. Mother, just let me go. My sister knows a lot. As long as I can learn half of her skills, I don't have to worry about not being able to support myself in the future. How can you support yourself? When you grow up, find a good man to marry. Don't you have to work in the fields when you get married? Arya cut off her mother's words and said, then you still support yourself. Find a good family, the kind that doesn't need to go to the farm. Feng used to think that maybe only a sister-in-law could marry such a family, but now her daughter is also a person who has gone to school, reads, and can keep accounts. It's not bad, it's possible to marry into such a family. Arya has not yet opened her mind and never thought about getting married. She knows that her mother is going to work in the fields, and her aunt is busy every day. The third aunt, fourth aunt, and fifth aunt are also married, and no one can sitting and eating rice. My sister-in-law said, don't look at what people say, but look at how they do it. According to Arya's limited knowledge, there is no such thing as a daughter-in-law in this world who can eat for nothing. In the village and outside the village, the women she saw were considered to be doing well. In the village, most of the daughters-in-law who married into the family were exhausted, and the food was still the worst. She doesn't want to live like that. She likes to keep accounts and settle accounts, and likes the feeling of earning money by herself. It took her half a year to make sure that she would not be able to learn the cooking skills of her aunt, so she should find another job. The next chapter is around 6 o'clock in the afternoon.